Hello, Mick, and thank you for your time. As I said, it must be very early at your place because there is a significant time difference between our time zones. So thank you so much for waking up this morning.
My pleasure, Ivan. I'm happy to wake up every morning. So,
Yeah. Mick, you are the CEO of TaskTop. For people maybe not familiar with your work, can you please briefly tell us what do you and TaskTop focus on?
absolutely. So we've been focused on basically two things. One is learning how to scale software delivery and help organizations, basically establish organizations and enterprises become software innovators. And we've done that by providing tools that enable them to do this, and then from learning from the data that we learn from those tools. So over the years, basically, we realized how disconnected organizations' value streams are, that they need to be organized in a new way, according to projects, not products. This was a really interesting discovery because when you come from a technology company, you sort of obvious that you innovate around products, not around these 6, 12, 18-month projects. And so all of that data was first collected and understood from our integration tools, which this is the TaskTop Hub tools. Then we realized that there was this whole layer missing for organizations to actually manage their product value streams. And so we created a new tool called TaskTop Viz. And now that tool is giving us a tremendous amount of data on how to basically shift from project to product, how to create these end-to-end value streams, and then how to identify bottlenecks, and then these, what we now call these flow diagnostics within them. So we basically build and sell software tools for managing product value streams, for value stream management, and then we take all those learnings, and we've been putting them into various thought leadership and other vehicles to help organizations think on how to make this transition to becoming a software innovator and to mastering software at scale.
Great. I mean, this is the layer that was missing the whole time in this software industry. I mean, I've been in software industry for quite some time. I know you have been also, and it's for me the greatest industry in the world. But looking in hindsight at enterprise organizations, especially, there is always somebody unhappy with the final result, be that the business or the IT. And in your book, Project to Product, you are pointing out to this disconnect between the business and the IT. So can you explain how does this disconnect manifest itself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should mention that, while I'm of course very busy with helping TaskTop with its own products and portfolio, for me, this big realization came when I started seeing these initial sets of data, and the fact that, like you said, Ivan, software is great. We love building software. So why is it that it's so difficult in some of these organizations? Why is it that the kind of joy that you get as a developer or as someone working on a great software product? Why is it that I was not seeing as much of that joy in our customers? And I realized there's the wrong approach in place to managing, understanding software delivery. So you basically had this disconnect where both sides are unhappy. I also realized that fixing this through our products alone was not enough. We had to change the perspective of the industry on how software innovation and software delivery should work, how it works well in open source and startups and in tech companies, and that this was the only way to get the same kind of productivity and joy that you get from building great products and doing great innovation into established enterprises where things seemed quite miserable, where the business side was disappointed, things were moving too slowly, that things were off track, that we weren't innovating quickly enough, yet was applying the completely wrong mindset in terms of how you should manage software innovation. So with that, I realized we needed, this new approach was needed, which is why I wrote the Project to Product book, to say, if we don't have a consistent way of thinking about managing and measuring software delivery and innovation, if that way doesn't address the fundamentals of software, such as the fact that tech debt is a real thing. But if the business side doesn't understand tech debt, you'll never actually get the result that you're expecting because you'll always be trying to bury that or not planning or managing around it. That if we didn't start to think differently, then these organizations would never be on track on their digital transformations, right? And we'd have established tech giants and new companies who have figured this out and were born digital, taking more and more of the market. And I actually think we need both. We need both the tech companies to innovate, and we need everyone else to come along as well, because we need a diverse economy, and we need all these people who work in enterprise IT and in large organizations and government institutions to innovate as well. So that was the reason to write the book, is to change that perception, to take those ideas that we've learned through Agile, through DevOps, and to apply them to basically creating software product innovation, a management model for software product innovation. That's really the flow framework. So the goal of the flow framework is actually quite simple, is to expose the dynamics of software delivery to a common measurement model that both the technology and the business side can agree on. So to understand that flow is about the customer. It's not about how quickly an agile team finishes something. It's about the time to market for delivering value to a customer. That all these flows need to be end to end, not around one set of activities or the other, not around these things that result in local optimization of the value stream. And to expose all of the key aspects in the simplest way possible that need to be measured, right? The fact that we need to measure the flow of features, defects, risks, and debts. We can't ignore one or the other. Now, of course, there's more detail when you get closer and closer to how work is done, but at a minimum, you have to measure those things. You have to correlate those to what your business results are. And you have to do that much more iteratively, because if you set a 12-month plan, well, chances are reality will have changed a lot over the course of those months. So really the goal was to create a measurement model and framework that both the business and technology can use to basically steer their organizations, their innovation in the right way. So,
yeah, what we see is actually a very, I would say, low understanding of the importance of portfolio management. And when there is a portfolio management practice in place, very rarely there are measures also in place that take the holistic view end to end, both from business and the IT perspective. And maybe Flow Framework is the best solution to actually incorporate these two views on the same work that gets done in the organization. So let's all look at the same process, and let's all look at the same measures that are actually taken from the perspective of the customer, and how fast and how well this value flows through the organization to the customer. And looking from this perspective, this is something that we actually also see missing as a missing link in a lot of organizations that we work with. But also, as you mentioned in the book, there are a lot of obstacles in a way for an organization to work like this. So, for example, one of them, I would say the most difficult one is the approach of considering IT as a cost center. So this is something that we talk a lot about, but I don't think that people really understand what connotations this has for an IT. Can you please tell us a bit more about how cost center approach and mindset is actually detrimental to the IT?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Ivan, you mentioned the importance of understanding and managing a portfolio, right? So I think we all understand that you've got a complex organization. The portfolio that you manage around your IT functions, around your software and digital capabilities is key. So the question becomes then, what is that portfolio? And if it's a portfolio of projects are inherently around these activities that you track to whether they're on time, on budget, and each of them assumes that value is very well specified, that you understand exactly at the start of the project what the value is at the end of the project. And let's say a 12-month project, which works really well if you're making a bridge, because you know exactly what that bridge should look like, you know exactly the kind of concrete, and you hopefully you get the right concrete. If not, you have to restart the project. But that happens very seldom, that you get the wrong concrete. So you've got all this certainty around what you're producing. And digital innovation is just totally the opposite. It's a discovery and a learning process that needs these three ways of DevOps, right? Flow and feedback and continual learning. So if you pretend you know everything at the start, you'll either bake in way too much risk and your costs will be higher than they should be. You won't be accounting for learning. You're basically taking the wrong approach to delivering value because you understand exactly what you need to deliver. Not that you need to learn as you deliver, whether it's learning technology stacks, learning customer profiles, learning about an evolving market, learning what how purchasing or usage patterns will vary in a pandemic and so on. So basically the IT today, if it's only managed as a cost center of projects, completely ignores that learning and that feedback loop. And what software innovators have mastered is the opposite, is understanding things from a customer's perspective, because customers consume digital products. So understanding what they're consuming, what's working, learning from it quickly, and having this feedback loop that learns very quickly where in the portfolio you invest and where in the portfolio you divest, how to rebalance, and so on. It's all about customer value and the value that you're delivering, both on, and the portfolio in software is complex because it's both a portfolio of products that customers use directly, as well as the internal platform products or the delivery pipelines themselves that are needed to support those. So the challenge is that IT organizations many of them have not come from this historically, right? They've come from IT as a function to provide networks and laptops and business applications and so on to the business that have all been treated as a cost. They've never been around delivering to the top line of the business. They've been about managing the bottom line. So everything is viewed as a cost. And there isn't a management model in place that says, okay, here's how much value we've delivered. And so that's in doing the research for Project the Product and in all these conversations I was having with IT leaders, I realized that's the problem, is that these organizations do not have a way of measuring value for their software, for their IT. So how can we possibly expect them to manage to value delivered if they don't have a way of measuring value? And also, you've got this challenge in software that sometimes value takes, in terms of realizing value, some of these things do have naturally longer cycles, right? In terms of how much you've grown your top line and so on. So I realized that we need a framework to help catalyze the shift from project to product. We need to give organizations tools for not only measuring cost, which tends to be easy because you do it through, finance knows how to do that very well already, but that for each product value stream, you need a way of measuring value. And that will catalyze this broken way of looking at IT as a cost center, where if you manage the cost, that's all you'll ever get. You'll never build more value. You do a transformation where you only manage cost, your transformation will result in a lower cost base, and chances are it will also result in delivering even less value because you never managed the value delivery and how you're improving it. So that basically at every step of transforming, of improving, of shifting from project to product, or driving software innovation, or rebalancing your portfolio, you need a way of measuring value and to see if the action that you took increased the flow of value or decreased it. And that's really, cost centers, just to finish answering your question, Ivan, the cost centers are just completely the wrong model. You'll never get good at delivering value to customers or survive in a competitive market if all you measure is cost. So that's, if you're still in that mindset, you're heading down the wrong path. And so the question is, so you need to accept that you need to measure value for each product value stream, and then decide how you're going to measure value. And the whole point of the flow framework is you measure value through what flows through your software value streams, and then you decide, you basically measure, did adopting this new tool, this methodology, this aspect of the scaling framework and so on, did that increase, or this DevOps automation, did that increase the flow of value or not? So you're always measuring value.
Yeah, value as a first-class citizen in this approach. Apart from considering our IT as a cost center, one practice that we've also been all using in IT projects is actually project-oriented approach to software delivery. And myself being a project manager also and having a PMP certificate under my belt, I know a thing or two about such approach. And could it be that this project-oriented approach is actually also detrimental to the initiative success? Is there a causation or just a correlation between project-oriented approach in IT and the failure rate of such projects?
Yes, so I think the answer is yes, and I think it's not that project management's bad. So I read a few years. I've done it myself. I don't, unlike you, I don't have certifications, but I did read the PMBOK, and there's great there are great insights in there. The challenge is it's good for a certain type of work where you can have certainty around resource allocation up front, and for highly iterative work where you're discovering how something's working for a market, how a customer is responding, it's not good. This is where you actually need some of these principles that in the end come from Donald Reinertson's of product development flow, and which project the product builds on, where you basically measure, you have these long-lived value streams, and they don't live the lifetimes of project or a budget cycle. They're based around the life cycle of an actual product, which will have longer life cycles, right? There's no this notion that you do a 12-month software project and it's shifts into support and maintenance is completely bogus. And to answer your question, I think it has resulted in a lot of the failures and dissatisfaction in IT projects, right? Because there's no distinct end of a software product that way, right? You just simply manage the life cycle of the product, where initially you focus more on feature development, and tech debt comes up. You have to deal with tech debt. You have to scale it, maybe deal with quality and security, then do another wave of feature development as it's scaling up, and so on. So you've got this very fluid, long-lived life cycle on which you need dedicated talent and a dedicated product value stream. Because the other thing that's caused such a problem with applying the project management mindset to product innovation is you might assign a person to multiple projects. That kind of makes sense if you're doing project management. In software value stream, what we've noticed is you take a developer, you assign them to 2 product value streams, you've not half their productivity, you've taken out 90% of their productivity, because they're no longer as engaged, they're not forming as a part of the same team, and so on. So basically project management is great when there's a fungibility to the resources. You can move them around. You can use this type of concrete or that. It's different with something creative like building software, where you actually need stable teams and value streams to get better and better at the tremendous complexity that they work with. So yeah, basically project management, it's not that project management goes away. If you're bringing a new software product to market, you should have a project plan, right? On the launch of the product, all the social media campaigns, everything that you're going to do, all the enablement and messaging, all of those things are great to manage as projects. But the actual development of the product itself, this is what needs to be done in a product-oriented fashion. And it's a whole different set of measurements, because there's such an uncertainty, such an inherent creative and learning process in it, which is not where product management excels. So,
yeah.
Project management excels, sorry, which is not what project management excels. Yeah.
I've seen a tweet recently, actually, correlating what you were just talking about, that software is never done. It just gets abandoned at some point. So it pretty much resonates with this, that you cannot really put a point in time when software development is done and then you're moving it to maintenance, because there is always some kind of improvements and always some kind of refactoring that is done in order to work in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not to say that you don't kill software products. You do. And companies that are very good at it, they actually will have active product management functions that take on old products that should be sunset or killed. So it's actually a separate, in my mind, it's a separate product management function that you need to actually wind down those products, to say, okay, we're no longer going to address technical debt issues on this product, because given the results it's delivering right now, we might be at a dead end of the market and the software platform or something else. And then you actively manage the sunsetting of that product. But it's not this discrete event. We're done, it's going to maintenance. It simply doesn't work that way. You very actively wind it down. So,
yeah. Well, this product-oriented approach clearly works well, even in large organizations. As you were mentioning, Boeing in your book is actually one of the nice examples how product-oriented approach can work even in very large organizations that are also very cost conscious. So it's not like they don't care about the costs. So they also keep their eyes on the cost, but they also keep their eyes on the value and what they are bringing to their customers. So obviously it is possible to be a large enterprise organization and still have this product-oriented approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key thing is it's managing cost and value. You manage both, right? In the end, you manage the life cycle profitability of these products, right? You want at the start, as you're getting traction, they might not be profitable, the costs are higher. It's very important that you track cost on each product value stream. And this is why actually, and the flow framework is so specific about this. You need to identify each product value stream so you can separately track its cost. And software organizations that are good at this, they'll actually track the hosting cost. This is what we do at TaskTop. We track the hosting costs separately for each product value stream, because one might be using a ton of compute power, one might just be using some cheap storage, right? So you actually need to have, the key thing about organizations, just in a similar way to how Boeing or a car manufacturer just manages costs, understands costs separately for their different models of airplanes or cars. You need to track cost per product value stream. You need to track value delivered per product value stream. And then you've got two of the key components to managing a software portfolio. And for example, when you see your costs not matching the value that you're getting from it, this is when you might move it to, let's say, the sunsetting part of your portfolio, so you can take those resources and invest them elsewhere. And so it's just that kind of portfolio management is just a very different approach than this project and cost center approach. We're saying like, oh no, we need much more here. Let's scale up. Let's invest another $500,000 or $1 million or 50 more people to ramp up here. We'll be done in 3 months. Then we'll put that into support and maintenance and move over here. Just the inefficiencies that you get internally are tremendous, and which is why you very quickly get to this point where both the technology and the business side are very unhappy because business side is not getting enough. The times are too long. They don't understand why things are not moving quickly enough. Meanwhile, these horrendous inefficiencies have been introduced because people are always being moved off things, on things, never have a chance to actually build up the platforms that will help them move faster. And on top of that, because unless you've actually defined your product value streams in your portfolio, the business might not even be aware of the platform components that they need to invest in, which in the end will actually drive success if you look at the way that that digital natives innovate. So, yeah.
And listening to this, I'm sure that a lot of organizations are intuitively understanding the benefits of product-oriented approach, but are somehow stopped dead in their tracks because of organizational inertia and because things have always been done like this here. And what would you recommend in such situations? What would be some of the solid steps for such organizations toward a sustainable product-oriented mindset?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think the key thing is start defining and measuring your product value streams. This doesn't mean you have to know your whole portfolio. And I've seen a lot of organizations over the last year get stuck on trying to define their entire portfolio. That's a lot of work, right? And when you've never done it before, when the inertia is, and your budgets will remain project oriented for the next year or two, those things are harder to switch. So start right now by creating this overlay model where you basically, and you decide how big a part of your organization you want to do this with, right? But you take at least 1 or 2 product value streams. And these value streams are between 2 and 10 teams in size. So they're a layer over the agile teams. Agile teams are really a solved problem at this stage, right? People know how to manage agile teams. Not that everyone does it perfectly, but it's a well understood problem. Define 1 or 2 or 10 product value streams, and then start measuring these flow metrics and business results for those. And as soon as you start doing that, you start actually focusing in the right places. You start realizing, okay, wow, upstream of development, we actually have, if we measure the flow time, it looks like we actually have 2 months or 3 months where things are stuck in some kind of requirements analysis or getting into these broken loops of meetings and approval processes. And then you say, okay, we're going to focus there rather than focusing on this other thing we thought was important to automate, because that's our biggest bang for a buck in terms of reducing flow time, so reducing time to market. And as soon as you do that, the amazing thing to me in watching this, organizations do this, has been that there's such low-hanging fruit that the business side very quickly stops complaining about, oh, we don't have enough capacity, why can't we ramp up and down capacity whenever we want, we should be able to do that, to going, wow, so what you guys just did got us those features in 6 weeks instead of the usual 12 or 15. And it is quite amazing at how that becomes a flywheel of both sides, having the same goals, both sides, let's say, being focused on the other thing. By the way, the other key thing is focus on one flow metric. So pick flow time, pick flow velocity. Those are, in the flow framework, the 2 sort of best ones to start with. And let's just say you focus on flow time, because that is where the business side will notice the quickest gains. Like velocity, your throughput is, it's a little bit, it's really important to measure. It takes a bit longer for some people to understand, but time is easy. Like, we got this thing in 2 months and we got this thing in 1 month to the customer. So I would just say, pick flow time, define 1 or 2 value streams, measure flow time, look at where you'll reduce it, and you'll actually end up having this flywheel of a visible benefit that then helps you structure more of the organization this way and keep it going. So until the point where you go, okay, this has been proven out enough here. Let's actually take this product portfolio thing seriously.
Yeah. Excellent. And what is, in your experience, the maturity level of enterprise organizations when it comes to applying a product-oriented approach?
It's interesting, as I think the desires there, both with business and technology leaders. Like you said, there's a lot of organizational inertia. I know, definitely several dozen companies that we work with who are committed to switching to a product-oriented operating model. So I think there's a lot of desire, but the context absolutely is cost centers and projects, right? So it truly is a question of how to catalyze this journey. And I think those are some of the key ways of doing it is just start and then build on those successes. And I think the really interesting thing is once you start doing this, it actually is interesting how fast it can happen, how fast significant benefits happen. It's not like you have this perfect product portfolio with everyone happy overnight, which is why we actually encourage measuring happiness. That's a key thing on the flow framework. But because that is key to where you need to end up. But once you get this flywheel going, it breaks through those inertias because the benefits are so quick and actually so easily attainable. So at least the quick wins, some of the bigger structural things where you've got massive underinvestment in this, one part of your backend system that's storing all the data you need to basically re-platform. Those are harder things, but at least the really great thing with the flow metrics and with using that data is it actually gives you a data-driven way to make the business case for it. And so you go away from everyone knowing it's a problem to actually accepting this, this direction to solve the problem, because you can now make a clear hypothesis on, okay, if we actually do that, we're going to make every one of these business products go faster. And so we do want to take the 6 months or the 9 months to focus in on that.
Yeah, great. Mik, can you tell us who are the people you follow and the books that you read that make you do better each day?
Yeah, so I'll tell you kind of two of my, so I think there's obviously all the IT Revolution books, and my book was published in IT Revolution, so I read all those. I think there's great work there. I'll tell you two, and I think they are really important to read. I'll tell you two maybe sort of less well-known ones because they've influenced me tremendously. So in terms of the sort of the managerial approach to me, the thing that really changed my thinking around customers, around management and the business side of things has been Peter Drucker. And then to me, almost his counterpart in product development is the person I mentioned on earlier is Donald Reinertsen, right? If you can kind of, in my mind, put together the ideas of Peter Drucker and Donald Reinertsen, and Donald Reinertsen's book is Product Development Flow, I think you're really seeing, sort of the potential an organization can have to innovate and to deliver value to a customer, and why they deliver that value, and why it should always be around value delivery, not around activity or internal processes and so on. And then I think there's interesting offshoots of that, like re-engineering the corporation, I think was an attempt to do this outside of the digital realm. And of course, my goal with Project to Product was to say, okay, well, here's how you can re-engineer your corporation incrementally, because it's as you said, we have to find a way to get started, but doing it from into the digital realm. So, but yeah, definitely, I recommend going into those two for some of the foundational work. And I think a lot of what the popular authors in our industry have done, they've built on some of those great foundations. So.
Great, that's a great list. And I have one more question, the last one, the most important one, which is, how was it to drive those BMWs in Germany? Was it everything that you expected?
Yeah, no one's asked me that question. I get the after people who read Project to Product ask the question, do you drive a BMW? And the answer is no. I do not own a BMW. I own an old Volvo, but which I really like still. But it was amazing. So it was an i8, an i3, an M2, and a new 5 Series that we drove at the end of the second day of the planned tour. And getting to drive each one was incredible. The I models are just amazing automotive innovation, an amazing story, how quickly BMW brought them to market and so on. But what was it? It was like a 450 or 480 horsepower M2. That was the most fun thing ever. So
I would like to visit that factory also once. Mik, thank you so much for your time. This was so insightful, and I really learned personally a lot from this conversation. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Ivan. And yeah, keep up the great work. So.
Thank you. Bye, bye, bye.
Bye, bye.